Void Mage Gamer is now partnered with Flipside Gaming, so you can use the promo code on their website, all caps, Void Mage, to get 10% off all orders $10 or more. It's a great way that you can support both Flipside Gaming and Void Mage Gamer's channel. Hey guys, welcome to another deck tech video. This time we have a pretty interesting commander to go over. I did mention how I thought that Teysa Karlov was probably my favorite from the set, but going back to Ravnica Allegiance, there is one other commander that I'm actually interested in. It's not Prime Speaker Vannifar, it is in fact Zegana Utopian Speaker. Comparing her to her previous version, Prime Speaker Zegana, she is not nearly as powerful in terms of card draw and what you're capable of comboing, things like food chain. She's not going to do anything crazy like that. She's just going to enter the battlefield, and if you have another creature with a +1/+1 counter on it, you draw a card. So it's very situational just to get one card draw. However, what she does is actually pretty good if you want to build a +1/+1 counter themed deck, because each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample, including her, which is an incentive to use her Adapt 4, which is pretty expensive. It's 6 mana just to get 4 +1/+1 counters on her. But once you are able to do that, you have an 8/8 with trample, making commander damage a possibility, although it's not really the main direction of the deck. Because like I said, this is going to be a +1/+1 counter themed deck with our other creatures. We're going to have utility, we're going to have a lot of cool things that we can do. We can remove +1/+1 counters, we can proliferate. So while Prime Speaker Zegana is going to give us more card draw, we're really going to play her for her +1/+1 counters, because she's going to end up with a ton of them. We also have Vorel of the Hulklade, which is one of the commander options that for a while has been associated with counters. However, I never really liked him because it wasn't so much just about creature +1/+1 counters, but trying to fool around with things like Lux Cannon, and I felt like the deck was a little bit slower than I wanted it to be. So I just like the pacing that this deck can introduce, get some more card draw. But let's look at some of the creatures here, especially when it comes to mana ramp. We have the new card, Incubation Druid. You can add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. If it has a +1/+1 counter on it, you add 3 mana of that type instead. I'm just going to ignore the adaptability because most of the time that's probably not going to be relevant, because we can have other creatures give Incubation Druid +1/+1 counters. But at the very worst, turn 4, you can use the mana that it produces to contribute towards its adaptability, get 3 +1/+1 counters on it, then it taps for 3 mana. This alongside what is already pretty good in Gyre Sage and Rishkar Pima Renegade. We have other creatures that are going to fool around with mana. If you want to get some lands, you can play Fertilid, get even more +1/+1 counters onto it, and we have a way to tutor up lands. So we shouldn't really be struggling with mana, and card draw in the deck is going to be pretty abundant. So we have the awesome Fathom Mage, the evolve mechanic from Gatecrash. Whenever +1/+1 counter is placed on her, you may draw a card. This, as well as Toothy Imaginary Friend, we're going to be pairing him up with his friend Pier. We're going to get even more counters on him. When he leaves the battlefield, we can draw a whole bunch. We have some important card draw spells like Inspiring Call, drawing a card for each creature we control with a +1/+1 counter on it, giving them indestructible is pretty powerful too. We also have Tezzeret's Gambit, Urban Evolution, Rishkar's Expertise, so we can fool around with things like Proliferate, but more importantly, we're just drawing a bunch of cards and benefiting off of the power of our creatures with Rishkar's Expertise, getting to cast more spells as well. But a lot of what this deck is going to do is utility. We're just going to have a ton of interactions with +1/+1 counters, Walking Ballista so we can deal some damage, ping some creatures with 1 toughness maybe. We have some ways that we can get some more +1/+1 counters on it in the deck, so we don't have to depend on its activated ability to get more. Scavenging Ooze is a must-have in this deck, I think. Being able to hurt your opponent's graveyards, seeing as there's so many decks like Muldrotha, Marina Clan, Neltoth, you gotta play this. Plaxcaster Frogling, just to give some creatures Shroud. Most of our creatures, if not all of them, are going to end up with +1/+1 counters, so this is pretty good. You don't even have to use the graft. Ravenous Slime, again, Graveyard Hate is spectacular. From Commander 2018, one of my favorite cards. It can also get pretty massive because it does have +1/+1 counters on it, equal to those creatures' power. And we have some pretty cool stuff here like Simic Manipulator and Cytoplasm Manipulator. Both of these are going to fool around with stealing our opponent's creatures, so we have some usefulness out of their +1/+1 counters. And we have some more control here in Bane of Progress, Whiptongue Hydra, very good removal for artifacts and enchantments. And Whiptongue Hydra, again, Commander 2018, very underrated card, dealing with our opponent's flying creatures, ending up with a ton of +1/+1 counters on it. We also have the counterspell creature Draining Whelk. which can counter a spell and end up with some +1/+1 counters on it. And as far as our enchantments go, we have some that support +1/+1 counter themes in hardened scales, ending up with more of them. Bred for the Hunt is kind of like the Bident of Thassa for the deck. Whenever a creature with a +1/+1 counter on it deals combat damage, we get to draw a card. We also have Hadana's Climb, which can flip into a land that's going to make a creature massive and give it flying. We have Inexorable Tide, just to proliferate some more counters on our creatures. More commonly seen with Super Friend strategies or even Infect, but I think if you're just going with a ton of +1/+1 counters on your creatures, slowly making them bigger is better. And we have the newer card, Wilderness Reclamation. At the beginning of our end step, we're going to untap all lands we control. This is good mainly for the control that we have in the deck, because we have a ton of counter spells, things like Fuel for the Cause that are going to synergize with the deck even more. But we also have the adaptability on Zegana, Utopian Speaker, as well as Incubation Druid. So freeing up our mana at the end of our turn, giving us the ability to respond to our opponent's stuff. This is definitely going to see a ton of play in Commander. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much the deck. We have some cool things like Vigor that are going to give even more +1/+1 counters to our creatures. That can get out of hand, seeing as we have things like Blasphemous Act in the format, and some people do make that mistake. Overall, though, less is more when it comes to this commander. I think with Prime Speaker Zegana, you had a ton of card draw and potential. You had the combo with Food Chain, but that does draw a lot of attention. I feel like with this commander, you have a little bit more consistency. You have a solid theme around +1/+1 counters, but it's not going to be too intimidating like that Prime Speaker Zegana. I feel like this Zegana just does enough. It could threaten with commander damage. Giving your other creatures trample is also pretty sweet, seeing as we have a ton of creatures that can get massive. But anyway, guys, hope you liked this video. Let me know what you think about the deck. The link to it will be in the description below. You guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.